Moxie, and I just wanted to show you a little bit about how I used Keynote to create a visualization of pi and the area of a circle in circumference. Maybe some of these tips will help you as you're making content for your kids and your students. So first of all, this was just a basic Keynote slide deck, but I did do a couple things that were using some of the more advanced features, if you will. So right here, I just wanted to be able to have this round circle here with the Moxie logo in it roll. And what was particularly important here, because I was trying to create a visualization of pi, was the idea that the circumference of this circle equals something that would be 3.14 times the diameter of the circle. So I needed an accurate representation of the movement and the rotation. And what you'll find is if you select one of these objects under the animate up here in the corner, you've got lots of different actions, and one of them is simply rotation, and you can choose to tell it to rotate. And you've got angle measures. You can go from 0 up to 359 degrees, but for my purpose I just needed one rotation, so I set this to 1. And really what we want here is acceleration. We wanted none. And then I added to that, and you can do that by, once it does that, you click on the little plus sign and you'll get an add. And what I added to it was a move. And so the move, if we look here under build order, I can grab the move right there. So here's the move settings. You can see here I decided, just for giggles, because I could, that I would set it to go for 3.14 seconds, although really you could have made that any amount of time. The positioning, though, was important, and so what I looked at was, where was this object to begin with? And it was beginning at 199 point on XY, or it might have been 200 when I first started, but it got jiggled about. But what I wanted to do then was, I knew how wide this was. It was basically 300 pixels wide. And so I did the math. 300 pixels times 3.14 got me 900 some odd more pixels, 942 I believe it was. And so I had to add 942 to the 200 position where I started. This should have been at 200. That should be at 301. That should be at 300. And that gets me out to like 1142 pixels. And so when I look at this move thing under animate, and I look at all these different actions, and I look at just the move, I set it out here to 1142. There we go. And now I know that the rotation of one rotation set over 3.14 seconds, and the move also set at 3.14 seconds, is then going to roll and actually look natural as it moves. I did the same thing then for this line. I made it the same length so that it would be the correct length, and did the math there again. And then same thing, I actually have it doing a wipe where it's going to wipe over a certain amount of time, but I didn't really set it exactly 3.14. I set it just to kind of be delayed and come a little bit later. But other things to note in here is, when you start adding moves, whether the build-ins or actions, things like, you can add a move. You can see that there. Move that out of the way so you can see. If we were adding a move to something, right, there's moves and other little things, but for the most part, move and rotations are probably some of the more common ones, as well as scale, particularly if you're trying to make any visualizations for mathematics or the like. They'll all show up under build order, and they're going to come in whatever order you create them, but then you can start dragging them around and moving them. And more importantly, you can do things. For example, I have this move set up to move the circle just simply from right to here, right to left, left to right. And then I also set up the rotation. When I set the rotation, though, I can then say, when do I want it to happen? And I said with build 1. So the move and the rotation happen simultaneously, so it actually looks like the ball is rolling, so to speak. And then I had this other thing, this kind of background circles, just to kind of give you a sense of 3 and a little bit more circle, 3.14 circles, and the line. And then on another click, then I had another group of things, which was just simply these objects showing up. And again, I wanted one to happen on the click, but then the next one I told it, do it after build 5, wait a second. After build 6, wait a second. So I don't have to click 3 or 4 times. I just clicked once, and all these things happen one after the next while I'm talking and explaining when I'm actually presenting the slide. The rest of these things, again, are just simply objects appearing. So when the slide actually plays, most of these things aren't on the screen. They start to appear, and that's by doing quote-unquote build-ins. So anytime you add an object to a Keynote slide, if you don't add a quote-unquote build-in, it will just be there right from the get-go when you get to that slide. If you add a build-in, then it will appear based on this build order with whatever option you choose. And again, you've probably looked at these before. Some of the ones, there's these ones down here, which your kids might do in the class, and these ones here. which just make everyone motion sick. Usually I tend to use just simply wipes, appear, and dissolve, the three most common ones I use, and I use wipe a lot because then I can have it do things like, say, choose left to right, and you can see it's going from left and it's moving toward the right, and you can see it. That gives me that visualization that I want to see that motion from in that direction. So let's just play test this slide just so you can see it. So if I play here and I click this, you can see it rolls across. A little bit of skidding there, but in general, and let me check on my command there. I think, yeah, see, because that was supposed to be set on none. It always resets itself, so you got to check on that. So you set my acceleration to none, and on this one my acceleration is none, and so now when I play this, it should look better. There we go, perfect. It's just rolling naturally, and it moves the distance I wanted it to. So again, that's one of the ways you can kind of add realistic motion. One of the things that's important about technology and the ways that we can use it with kids is that we can provide visualizations for things that might be difficult to explain or difficult for kids to visualize themselves when they read it, and helps give them a better understanding. Throughout this slide deck I did the same thing here. Down in this slide is a little bit more difficult moves that I did, and this was mostly just so you could see the pieces of this circle are going to get rearranged into wedges that lay up against each other that form this shape, that eventually form a shape kind of like what you can see here. And so I'll play this one, for example, so you can kind of see what I did here. But you can see these have a move which moved this pie piece to here. This pie piece moved and rotated to here, so on and so forth, but they will all end up going like that, which then gives me this opportunity to then continue to talk about how circles can get broken into all these little wedges that ultimately look like this, which eventually gets us to a rectangle, which gives us 2 pi r squared. If you're interested in actually seeing the whole video with the description, or even sharing it with your kids, if you happen to be an elementary or middle school teacher and you've got kids who need to understand why pi r squared works, I'll put a link both on the blog page and in the descriptor on YouTube, so you can find that other video. But those were some of the simple things I did using Keynote here. Some other things I did also was to get these little pi wedges. You may have been trying to do things like get, say, a pi wedges. Maybe you had the same thought, you were trying to do it, and you thought, oh, I'll use this circle tool and I'll draw my circle and then I'll make a pi wedge, and you discover, oh, how do I break that up? I can't cut it into pieces. And yes, you can do it lots of different ways with different graphics programs, but here's the way I did it. Was I started by using the chart tool and simply made a pie chart. So by default it just throws in these junk numbers. I go to edit. It organizes in this way, but because I knew I needed a lot of pie pieces, I actually switched to vertical, so the data runs this way now. And oops, you'll see, because I just need a pie chart with equal size pie pieces, I just need a whole bunch of 1s, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and voila, 8 equal sized pie wedges. I go over here to wedges. I can turn off those numbers because I didn't need those. And then you can see if I use this distance from center, I can actually explode this, which then allows me to more easily screenshot just one of these with a plain white background around it. And then I can separate it out. What I also did before I took the screenshot, just knowing that I was going to need this, was because I had 8 here, just in a certain way, what I did do is I tried to rotate them first, and so that I would have them correct for what I needed, which actually should be, I think, some 5. That gets me this perfectly vertical. Unselect it, and then I can just do the, Apple or Command Shift 4 screenshot, where I can select a region of the screen. That let me get that pie wedge. I moved it up. I took that, say, that red one on the bottom, but by and large, if we just simply look over here on the desktop, we should find that screenshot. There it is. So I'm just going to drag it in here. And there it is. Now, one thing we'll note about this screenshot is, see, it's got the white background because I did that rectangular selection. And I want to get rid of that white background so it's easier, because, for example, if I have 2 of these, and this second one is flipped upside down, and I was trying to make that kind of crisscross shape. Of course, the white piece part overlaps the other one and it doesn't look right. So what I can do is under Image, if you weren't aware this was here, you can go to Instant Alpha, take your arrow and point it at a color that you don't want. So in case this is all white, I click here and the white disappears. So done. Do the same thing for this one because you can see it still has that white background. Instant Alpha, click on the white, and done. So now you can see I can take these two pie wedges, lay them up next to each other, and I can do that setup that I wanted to do. And I can make another one like that. All right, so that let me do that. So the Instant Alpha is also a really useful tool. The other thing you may have noticed in some of those other slides that I had made was that I had ones with an edge around them. Let me go back into that slide deck so you can see it. So on these you can see this blue wedge had this green piece here. So what did I do to get that? If I make another one of these, chart, but I use the donut option. Got to go in and edit the data like I did last time. So I'm going to make that a 1, and a 1, and a 1, and one more. And then same thing, I need to turn off some of this stuff because I don't need it. I don't need the data. I'm going to rotate this thing by, I think it's 22.5 degrees. Is that right? Yeah, looks about right. See how that green now lines up with that one. But, of course, what I need to really do here is first I'm going to make it a little bit skinnier so I can modify that. Click on that one, double click on that one in particular. Now I can move it out there and get it right where I want it. And now when I take a screenshot of that version, I'm going to get a couple extra little artifacts here, but we'll take a look and see what I can do to get rid of those. So let's hide that. There's that one. Close that out, get it out of the way. Sorry. Here we go. Pull that one in. Back. So here's this one that I just brought in. So again, if I use the Instant Alpha, I can get rid of the white. That's done. But then what happens if I try and get rid of this green stuff? Here. Fortunately, it does contiguous, so that little green piece will disappear, this little green piece, but not the main big green piece because they weren't touching each other. So there we go. So that's how I got that particular pizza wedge, so to speak. With this deck was I made a final recording, and I've had a number of folks always ask me, well, how do you record your voice over slides? And I've seen a lot of people posting online asking, what app can I use to record my voice over my slides? At least in Keynote, it's built in, and some people just haven't noticed it. So under the play menu, where normally people say play the slideshow, there's the record the slideshow. So under record, it then brings this up. You can see I added notes to the presenter notes so I could know what I was going to say for each particular slide. A couple hints for you here. You can see what I did because I knew I had multiple builds. I actually put little prompts for myself to remember when to click so that I could just naturally click when I needed to. So that's something you can do for yourself if you'd like. But in general, you can see this is all set up so that I can see the current slide. I can see what's coming next. I can see my notes. If I hit the little record button, it would start to actually record my voice while I was doing the slideshow. So I could simply just go through this as if I was presenting it live to some group. Or whatever, and then record my voice, and it syncs it all together, and then you hit the same button to stop it. Once you've finished that recording, you'll see under play there will be an option here to play the recording, or here, play the recording, and then you can also clear the recording. But once you've recorded it, under the file menu, go to export movie, and the option that you'll see there will be the slideshow recording. I don't have anything recorded now. But you can select that slideshow recording. It gives you an option for, do you want it in 720p or 1080p? For my purposes, because I knew I was uploading to YouTube, and YouTube doesn't seem to care how much stuff I stick up there, I put it into 1080p so it was in high quality, so that if someone watched it full screen, the graphics wouldn't get mushy. Exported it, and it gave me a movie file. I did do some very minor editing and iMovie because, of course, while I was going through it, I would mess up and make mistakes while I was reading or something like that, and then just kind of pause and then redo that slide. And so I imported the whole thing into iMovie and just simply cut out snippets here and there, but otherwise really didn't do any post-production on the thing. So generally speaking, relatively quick and easy. So if you're trying to prepare lectures or anything like that for your students, it may not be something as kind of fancy as this visualization, but just simply, something that you normally would have presented as a lecture, and you already kind of had your notes and your slides ready to go. One way to kind of record that would be this way. And then you can just provide that, through your Google Drive if you don't want to keep it on a public space, or if you have a YouTube space that you want to put it up there and make it available to your kids, or put it up as private, and the only people who can see it are those who have the URL, and then share the URL if you don't want the public to see it, whatever. Lots of different ways of sharing that out with your kids. That's a whole other video that we could record, I guess. But in general, quick and dirty and easy, so as people are getting into this time frame where more and more schools are moving traditional brick and mortar to an online space in order to keep the kids at home and not have large crowds of kids together where they might start to potentially get sick or ill. Trying to keep life simple for yourself and be able to record what might have always just been a lecture without having to do a lot of work, just to kind of facilitate getting things out there, and then spend more time on how you then interact with the kids and continue to collaborate with them and keep them active in the learning process. Thanks for watching. If you've got a question, please leave me a comment on the blog where you found this video. And if you found this video on YouTube, of course, why don't you track back to the original blog post? You'll find a link to that in the video description. So again, if you got questions about anything I did or said, or don't understand what I did, or you have a question about something I didn't do but you'd like to figure out how to get it done, go ahead and leave me a question on the blog. Thanks. Bye.